In this video we're going to tie a little hopper pattern called the club sandwich. First thing I did was I took a foam cutter. This is the large Chernobyl cutter. What I did was I just chopped out 3 little sections of foam, and you can use whatever colors you want. I like to use brown, tan, and flesh colored, but the sky's the limit. You can do whatever you want. And I glue those together with foam safe super glue made by Zap-A-Gap. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some UTC 140 in cream. You can use a heavier thread if you like, if you're more comfortable using Kevlar or GSP. Any of those threads will work just fine. And what we're going to do is we're just going to wrap a underbody. Then I'm going to spiral my thread forward to about the 2/3 point of the hook. Then I'm going to take my foam, I'm going to lay it onto the hook shank, and I'm going to take a loose wrap with my thread, and I'll do a second loose wrap. Then I'm going to take my thread, and on the top of the foam I'm just going to angle it backwards on top of the foam, and I'll do the same thing as I work my way back to the back of the hook shank. And you can make your little sections smaller and smaller if you so desire as you work back on the shank. Once you get to the tail, you're going to have to take your thread and hop off of the hook. I do so somewhat carefully. If your foam turns a little bit on you on the shank, don't worry about it too much. We can reposition it and we'll glue it all together here when we're all finished. Once I get the tail finished, I'm going to then close the X with my thread. You can see there on the tail, I'm just wrapping forward. All those little areas where we wrapped forward on the shank, or back on the shank, we're going to wrap forward and just close the little X. You can compress the foam even more at this point if you so desire. Then at the end I usually clip the tail. Just kind of gently shape it. You can actually see an area on the far side of the camera that I didn't quite get right. There we go. And you can straighten out the body. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to tie in the legs. And I've just tied a knot in 3 little legs, and then you want to make sure you super glue that knot or else it will come undone. So make sure you super glue it. And we're going to tie these in just right along the side of the shank. And I want them to be just slightly shorter than the tail itself. And we can peel back one of the legs and trim out the other 2. And I'm just going to repeat that process here on the other side, trying to make them the same length. Then bite down with a nice tight wrap of thread, and I'll wrap a couple wraps right on the shank. That'll anchor it. And I'll peel back one of those legs just like I did on this side. Now the next step is to tie in the indicator portion of the fly. This will allow you to see the fly as you are watching it float down the river, and you can use any color you want. If you can see orange, yellow, use whatever color you want. I'm using white. I can see white pretty good. I tie that in with a couple of wraps, and I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to stop about a hook eye length away from the eye of the hook. I'm then just going to make a loose wrap right over both the indicator portion of the foam and the sandwiched foam. Then I'm going to take each of my sections of rubber legs and just pull those forward. Then I'll pull those legs apart and I'll trim two of them away. Once I have that section nice and tight, I'm just going to lift up all the foam, wrap some wraps right on the eye of the hook, where I can then just take my whip finisher and I just sneak right under there with a few wraps. And you can trim your piece of indicator foam. I will trim it somewhat close so it's a little white blob kind of right on top of the fly. Then I'll kind of make this head look a little bit buggier just kind of by rounding the front portion of it. There we go. And we can trim our back legs. I like the back legs to just barely touch the water. So what I do is just draw them to trim one, and then I'll draw the two together, and then trim them so that they are the same length. And that's all there is to the club sandwich. Last thing you can do is you can just take a little bit of your super glue and just glue the entire underside of the fly. Now you do use just regular super glue at this point, and just let that air dry. And that is how you tie the club sandwich. Nice beefy high floating hopper pattern. You can find all the materials for this fly on our website, intheriffle.com, and you also find the recipe as well there. That is the club sandwich.